everyone, so I'm doing something a little different. I'm kind of reposting the video I did in November of making this top. The difference is I'm actually going to walk you through it, but you do need your own block, because my plan is to maybe do more of these where people can see something that they like, and if it's not in their size they can make it by just having their own block and using their own measurements. And so that's kind of what I'm planning on for this. So I'm reposting it with me walking through what I did, but also putting in the measurements that that the actual garment had. So it didn't have the longer shirt waist, it was shorter, but you use your own radius for your bust to create the cup for yourself. And then you add whatever you want down below, and just doing all that, making it custom for yourself. That's my plan. This video here and also in the eye corner is to make your own block for your own body. That would be great to start with first, and then come back to do, if you want to do this top, do this top. Yeah, so let's get into making the top for this. Yeah. The first thing that I do is I take my block pattern that I made in July of 2020 and put it on wrapping paper to retrace it out. I also take all the points that are on my block and make sure those are marked as well. Now what you want to do is find your bust point down to your lower bust and figure out the measurement there. And that would be your radius. And then what I did was I took that point from the fullest part of the bust down to the under bust, and I'm making a circle from the apex of my block. And then once I get all the points around, which would be easier with the compass, I make the circle. So what I'm doing is going a little lower than the bust and creating a line to do that deep V of the top and working it up into the top of the circle for the top of the bust. And then I take it down off to the side, figuring out how low I want to go. Doing it towards the armpit. Now I'm doing one for the underside of the bust, trying to figure out for that cup shape that's going to be created from the pattern. I do put dash marks or notches essentially on this to make sure that the points line up onto the lower half. So there is the cup part. It took me a couple tries to get it to where I wanted it. And now I'm measuring out the bottom to figure out how long I want from the underbust to the base of my shirt. On the original, it's probably only like 3 inches, not counting the amount for the hem. But like I did for mine, I wanted it to be longer, so I think I had done like 8 inches, but that still wasn't long enough. I do take in the side seam a little bit to kind of get it to be a little bit more snug because it will be a shirred back with the elastic. Now I'm actually adding the amount that I want for the length, but like I said before, I didn't make it long enough. But if you want to do the original top, 3 inches plus seam allowance. Now I'm cutting out the pattern that I created with the front. Remembering to add my waist measurements, waist placement onto the pattern. So what I'm doing is I'm creating sleeves, but these did not really work very well. It would have been easier just to create. No, it was more of a strap. It would have been easier just to figure out a length and not have done what I did. Now what I'm doing is I'm going through and writing the pieces, writing the name of the pieces, and uh, I'm just writing the. Okay, there we go. Writing what it's for, writing the date, the year, and writing the placement of the pattern piece. Now I'm placing the back block onto the paper and or the wrapping paper to also copy it and create the back piece. Marking out my waist point, make sure that they match up for the front. So what I was trying to do here was make sure that the back and front line up the same for the height, which it could have been. Honestly, it could have been taller, and the length as well, making sure that both those points meet up. So for the original design, it actually has a side back piece. The whole back is not shirred like I did for mine. So if you wanted to do more like the original, I would say add about 2 to 3 inches off the side back area, and then the rest of it would be a shirred back. And of course, I named these ones before cutting them out. So now I'm counting the number of squares I have for the cup, and then figuring out how many, which when I start cutting, I realize that I need to number them and then draw a straight line if I do that soon, all the way across to keep them even. But I cut the cup apart to create more fullness, but I also did this wrong. I was only supposed to cut up to the very top, not all the way through. And you'll see that in a little bit. Now I'm actually doing the line, going across to make sure that these line up when I go to tape them back down to make them make it fuller. Now that I know that I was supposed to block the camera, I was only supposed to cut up to the top. I'm trying to tape the pieces together a little bit to create that flare and kind of see with. So I'm actually taping them physically down to the wrapping paper at this point because I wasn't supposed to cut all the way through. Like I said before, I was only supposed to cut up to the very top to hinge it, and I did not do that. So now I looked at the image again, realized that because there's no any type of like ruching or anything on top, it's pleated at the bottom, and so I figured that out after I had cut them all the way through. But learn from my mistakes. Don't do that. Make sure to cut at the hinge and place them as far open as you want. I didn't even do this evenly. I just taped them down. Which would have helped if I had a little bit more space between 3 and 4. I could have pleated it a lot better. And then of course just going on that line where it's all spread apart and redrawing out that line to get that shape. And for some reason I go across the whole thing, probably for extra measure to make sure that I am cutting it right. And then re-adding the notches for some reason. I waste a lot of paper. I'm realizing right now. I do not do this in a eco-friendly way. I need to get better at that. But as I finish cutting out this last piece, those are all the pieces you need to create this top. When you do the shirring, you always add a few inches more to your piece and stretch your shirring while you're doing it, because I learned the hard way that if you don't stretch it, it starts to bunch and does not stretch after a while. So I had to do this twice. So I lied. That was the cup piece was not the last piece. We did not talk about the sleeve. So the sleeve. You can kind of see here from when I made the milkmaid dress. This was the sleeve for it, but then I added. So I measured from my underarm down to where I wanted it, and 12 inches. And I also say make a cuff. The cuff on the original is about an inch, but it also has a button where mine was about an inch and a half. Did not have a button. Make this bigger than you think, because this is about. I don't feel like, because if that's there's like 8 pieces and that's 16 plus another, whatever 8 inches, 8 inches. 32. Make this bigger, essentially, because if you look at the comparison of the original to mine, the sleeves are immense. They are very wide, very voluminous, if you want that. But this is essentially this, and you, of course, longer. But that's the last piece of this, and then you can put it all together.